Chapter 1 of Skull-Face by Robert E. Howard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Skull-Face by Robert E. Howard. Chapter 1 The Face in the Mist. We are no other than a moving row of magic shadow shapes that come and go. Omar Khayyam. The horror first took concrete form amid that most unconcrete of all things, a hashish dream. I was off on a timeless, spaceless journey through the strange lands that belong to this state of being, 1,000,000 miles away from Earth and all things earthly. Yet I became cognizant that something was reaching across the unknown voids, something that tore ruthlessly at the separating curtains of my illusions and intruded itself into my visions. I did not exactly return to ordinary waking life, yet I was conscious of a seeing and a recognizing that was unpleasant, and seemed out of keeping with the dream I was at that time enjoying. To one who has never known the delights of hashish, my explanation must seem chaotic and impossible. Still, I was aware of a rending of mists, and then the face intruded itself into my sight. I thought at first it was merely a skull. Then I saw that it was a hideous yellow instead of white, and was endowed with some horrid form of life. Eyes glimmered deep in the sockets, and the jaws moved as if in speech. The body, except for the high, thin shoulders, was vague and indistinct, but the hands, which floated in the mist before and below the skull, were horribly vivid and filled me with crawling fears. They were like the hands of a mummy, long, lean, and yellow, with knobby joints and cruel, curving talons. Then, to complete the vague horror which was swiftly taking possession of me, a voice spoke. Imagine a man so long dead that his vocal organ had grown rusty and unaccustomed to speech. This was the thought which struck me and made my flesh crawl as I listened. A strong brute, and one who might be useful somehow. See that he is given all the hashish he requires. Then the face began to recede, even as I sensed that I was the subject of conversation, and the mists billowed and began to close again. Yet for a single instant a scene stood out with startling clarity. I gasped, or sought to, for over the high, strange shoulder of the apparition another face stood out clearly for an instant, as if the owner peered at me. Red lips, half-parted, long dark eyelashes, shading vivid eyes, a shimmering cloud of hair. Over the shoulder of horror, breathtaking beauty for an instant looked at me. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 of Skull-Face by Robert E. Howard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2 The Hashish Slave. Up from Earth Center through the seventh gate I rose, and on the throne of Saturn sate. Omar Khayyam. My dream of the skull-face was born over that usually uncrossable gap that lies between hashish enchantment and humdrum reality. I sat cross-legged on a mat in Yun Shatu's Temple of Dreams, and gathered the fading forces of my decaying brain to the task of remembering events and faces. This last dream was so entirely different from any I had ever had before that my waning interest was roused to the point of inquiring as to its origin. When I first began to experiment with hashish, I sought to find a physical or psychic basis for the wild flights of illusion pertaining thereto, but of late I had been content to enjoy without seeking cause and effect. Whence this unaccountable sensation of familiarity in regard to that vision? I took my throbbing head between my hands and laboriously sought a clue. A living dead man and a girl of rare beauty who had looked over his shoulder. Then I remembered. Back in the fog of days and nights which veils a hashish addict's memory, my money had given out. It seemed years, or possibly centuries, but my stagnant reason told me that it had probably been only a few days. At any rate, I had presented myself at young Chatou's sordid dive as usual, and had been thrown out by the great negro Hassim when it was learned I had no more money. My universe crashing to pieces about me, and my nerves humming like taut piano wires for the vital need that was mine, I crouched in the gutter and gibbered bestially, till Hassim swaggered out and stilled my yammerings with a blow that felled me half-stunned. Then, as I presently rose, staggeringly and with no thought save of the river which flowed with cool murmur so near me, as I rose, a light hand was laid like the touch of a rose on my arm. I turned with a frightened start, and stood spellbound before the vision of loveliness which met my gaze. Dark eyes, limpid with pity, surveyed me, and the little hand on my ragged sleeve drew me toward the door of the dream temple. I shrank back, but a low voice, soft and musical, urged me, and filled with a trust that was strange, I shambled along with my beautiful guide. At the door, Hassim met us, cruel hands lifted and a dark scowl on his ape-like brow, but as I cowered there, expecting a blow, he halted before the girl's upraised hand, and her word of command which had taken on an imperious note. I did not understand what she said, but I saw dimly, as in a fog, that she gave the black man money, and she led me to a couch where she had me recline and arranged the cushions as if I were king of Egypt instead of a ragged, dirty renegade who lived only for hashish. Her slim hand was cooled on my brow for a moment, and then she was gone, and Yusef Ali came bearing the stuff for which my very soul shrieked, and soon I was wandering again through those strange and exotic countries that only a hashish slave knows. Now, as I sat on the mat and pondered the dream of the Skull-Face, I wondered more. Since the unknown girl had led me back into the dive, I had come and gone as before, when I had plenty of money to pay young Chatou. Someone certainly was paying him for me, and while my subconscious mind had told me it was the girl, my rusty brain had failed to grasp the fact entirely, or to wonder why. What need of wondering? So someone paid, and the vivid-hued dreams continued. What cared I? But now I wondered. For the girl who had protected me from Hassim and had brought the hashish for me was the same girl I had seen in the Skull-Face dream. Through the soddenness of my degradation, the lure of her struck like a knife piercing my heart, and strangely revived the memories of the days when I was a man like other men, not yet a sullen, cringing slave of dreams. Far and dim they were, shimmering islands in the mist of years, and what a dark sea lay between. I looked at my ragged sleeve and the dirty, claw-like hand protruding from it. I gazed through the hanging smoke which fogged the sordid room, at the low bunks along the wall whereon lay the blankly staring dreamers, slaves like me, of hashish or of opium. I gazed at the slippered Chinamen gliding softly to and fro bearing pipes or roasting balls of concentrated purgatory over tiny flickering fires. I gazed at Hassim, standing, arms folded, beside the door like a great statue of black basalt. And I shuddered and hid my face in my hands, because with the faint dawning of returning manhood, I knew that this last and most cruel dream was futile. I had crossed an ocean over which I could never return, had cut myself off from the world of normal men and women. Naught remained now but to drown this dream as I had drowned all my others, swiftly and with hope that I should soon attain that ultimate ocean which lies beyond all dreams. So these fleeting moments of lucidity, of longing that tear aside the veils of all dope slaves, unexplainable, without hope of attainment. So I went back to my empty dreams, to my phantasmagoria of illusions. But sometimes, like a sword cleaving a mist, Through the highlands and the lowlands and seas of my visions floated, like half-forgotten music, the sheen of dark eyes and shimmering hair. You ask how I, Stephen Costigan, American, and a man of some attainments and culture, came to lie in a filthy dive of London's Limehouse. The answer is simple. No jaded debauchee I, seeking new sensations in the mysteries of the Orient. I answer, Argon. Heavens, what deeps and heights of horror lurk in that one word alone! Shell-shocked, shell-torn. Endless days and nights without end, and roaring red hell over no man's land, where I lay shot and bayoneted to shreds of gory flesh. My body recovered, how, I know not. My mind never did. And the leaping fires and shifting shadows in my tortured brain drove me down and down, along the stairs of degradation, uncaring until at last I found surcease in yon Chatou's temple of dreams, where I slew my red dreams in other dreams, the dreams of hashish, whereby a man may descend to the lower pits of the reddest hells, or soar into those unnameable heights where the stars are diamond pinpoints beneath his feet. Now the visions of the sot, the beast, were mine. I attained the unattainable, stood face to face with the unknown, and in cosmic calmness knew the unguessable, and was content after a fashion, until the sight of burnished hair and scarlet lips swept away my dream-built universe and left me shuddering among its ruins. End of Chapter 2.